A couple of best practices when you're closing. You just got done, you sent the screencast, you called the business owner, let them know, hey, I've got an appointment at 3 with somebody else. Make sure you're gonna be there at 1:30 just before the close. These are some best practices. As I always say, I know these aren't always 100% possible to do, but if you do them, it's going to increase the likelihood of you getting the deal. So my goal every single time is like, how do I check the box on as many of these best practices as I can? Because if I can do all of them, I know I'm getting the deal. And if I can do 90% of them, I'm probably still gonna get the deal. So for example, back to door-to-door sales, we were always taught that you do business at the kitchen table. And your chances of closing a deal at the kitchen table were far better than sitting at the couch while he's watching TV. Way better at the kitchen table because he's focused, he's watching you, he's paying attention, and we're doing business. So the equivalent of that, and this is the first thing that I would say is a best practice I want you guys to write down, is get them on a desktop or a laptop. None of this phone bullshit. Here's why. If they're on their phone, that gives them the ability to be in their truck. That gives them the ability to be at the store. I did a close with somebody. The guy was on his phone driving and he was buying dog food. We still got the deal, but he was buying dog food. I was so pissed off. I'm like, bro, we are literally talking right here and you're buying dog food. So make sure they're at a desktop. If you do that, they're not gonna be able to be driving around or doing this or doing that or jotting down notes or whatever. Make sure they're at a desktop. Now, how do you do that without making it sound weird? This is what I would recommend. I would say, hey, if possible, please be at a laptop or a desktop because I want to show you a couple things. It's going to be really hard for you to see on your tiny little screen. That's how you're going to do it. Okay. So the equivalent of sitting at the kitchen table in door-to-door sales is being at a desktop, being at a laptop, not on the phone. What that's going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to get their attention and they're going to move everything else and they're just going to be focusing on you. Okay. It's going to be really hard for them to get up and go get a drink because they're going to have to carry their damn computer. And if they're at a desktop, they can't. So make sure they're at a desktop if at all possible. Next thing, one thing I learned doing door-to-door sales is you could go to the right person that had been looking for security systems, that had talked to their spouse, that had done homework on it the night before. But if you caught them in the middle of dinner, you were not getting the deal. Likewise, if you catch these people and they're on a job site, which hopefully if they're at a desktop or you push them to a laptop, this is going to solve this one as well. In my experience, my best pitches are at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day for the business owner. Before they go to work or at the end of work. And I personally like the beginning. Number one, because the business owner's fresh. He hasn't like started dealing with problems. He doesn't have all this stuff on his mind. And number two, I love getting up, closing a deal to start the day. My day is freaking on fire when I start the day with a deal. So first two things is at a desktop or laptop. And then the next thing would be either at the first of the day or the end of the day. Now, again, this is just best practices. Doesn't mean you're always going to be able to pull it off. One thing I've also seen is that I tell people a time that works. I say, hey, how does 7 a.m. Central Time sound tomorrow? If you just say, hey, what time works for you? They're going to literally just pull some number out of their ass. So they're going to do a lunch break or whatever. So those are the first two things. Next thing, we've already talked about this. Make sure all decision makers are present. That's the equivalent when we got in the house. If there was not a spouse in the house and we could tell that that person was not the decision maker, I would not do the pitch. I'd walk my ass right out the door and I would set a return appointment, period. And in fact, one time I had a lady and I was so adamant about following this process. I had a lady and I said, look, I don't no disrespect, but like, can I come back when your husband's here? Because I don't want to waste your time. And she's like, yeah, sure. You're free to come back. She's like, but I can just sign it. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I knew she was the decision maker. We sat down. It was like a 5-minute pitch because she was done. It wasn't even for the security. Her daughter was sneaking out and she wanted to slap that thing like Fort Knox, which we did. Last one, have everything pulled up. Before you get on the call, make sure all your windows are dialed in. Make sure you have your case studies, your screenshots. And in the script we're gonna go through, we go and we review the market monopoly strategy. Make sure your tabs are all organized. Don't go in there, start pulling stuff up and like all of that. Make sure it's all crisp and nice and it's ready to go. This is part of the getting the deal ready to go. And then lastly, and that's what I'm gonna get into, have this printed off, stick it right here or have a window pulled up with it. If you're a digital person, I like it printed off personally because I can jot notes. Have this printed off. Not because you need to follow it exactly, but because it's a place to reference. If you watched the interview this morning with Ryan in the free group, he was talking about he always has it printed off because it's a reference point. And if he gets stuck and he gets jammed up, he's like, oh yeah, I gotta go to this point. I gotta go to this point. So those are best practices before you get on the call. Let me review them. Get the business owner at a laptop or a desktop, okay? That's the equivalent of getting at the kitchen table if you're selling security systems. Make sure, if possible, to do your Zoom close at the beginning of the day or the end of the day where they're not distracted. I prefer the morning. And tell them what time you're available. Don't ask them, hey, what time works for you, man? They're gonna tell you some random ass time. It's gonna throw off your schedule. They're not gonna be prepared, and stuff comes up. In the middle of the day is way more likely for stuff to come up. Plus, nothing's better than getting a deal right first thing in the morning. You guys have gotten deals and you know what it feels like. You guys wanna juice up your freaking day. Get a deal 7 a.m. before you even go to the gym. That is like, my day is like guaranteed to just be a winner if I get a deal early. So I always love to stack deals at like 7 a.m. Okay, and it gets me out of bed. There's like tons of reasons why it's a good idea. Make sure all decision makers are present. We've talked about that over and over again. That's part of the setup. And then pull up and organize all your tabs. Have your market monopoly stuff, have your case studies, have your proof of other websites, all of it. Boom. So you're not grabbing stuff and you're losing them and everything. Get it perfect.